Hello, my name is Brandon Harper with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and today we're going to be going over some rifle shooting fundamentals. All right, so before we do anything with our rifles, it's really important that we make sure that our firearm is clear and that it's on safe. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, making sure that my muzzle's pointed in a safe direction. I'm checking the action, the chamber, and making sure there's nothing in the magazine, and ensuring that my safety is on. The first fundamental we're going to talk about is grip. All right, that's just how we are holding our rifle. So we can see right here that the stock has a natural place for our hand to grab. And then what we're going to do with our left hand and how that sits on the stock is when we get into our shooting position, we're just going to kind of let the rifle fall, and how we naturally grab that is where that hand placement needs to be. All right, the next fundamental we're going to talk about is buttstock placement, okay? And what the buttstock is the back portion of the stock right here, and how we are putting that into our shoulder is really important. So how we find the area where we're supposed to put that buttstock is the inside of our shoulder in the pocket. So if you point straight out in front of you, you'll feel the crevice in between your shoulder and your pec, and we want to place the buttstock there, and we want the buttstock high enough that we don't have to bend our head over to establish cheek weld, which we will talk about next. So this is the process in putting the buttstock in your shoulder and establishing that good shoulder weld. So as you can see, it's on the inside of my shoulder, and notice how high the buttstock is. I don't have to crane my head over to get to the stock. It's already right there. All right, now let's talk about cheek weld. What cheek weld is we are putting our cheek on the top of the stock, known as the comb, and we are putting our face down there to align our eye up with our sights, and it's also an anchor point that helps us manage recoil. So how we do that is we take the bottom of our jaw, which might be kind of hard to see because of my beard, but we put the bottom of our jaw on the comb, and all we do is we slightly rotate our face forward, and we should get a fat chipmunk cheek like this. Next thing we're going to talk about is eye relief. So a lot of scopes, when you buy them, the manufacturer will tell you the distance for eye relief. And what that means is how far away your eye should be from the back of the scope. And what you want to look for when you're looking through the scope is you want a perfectly clear picture. You don't want to see any shading or black areas in the scope. So when I'm going to establish that eye relief, I'm doing that in conjunction with establishing that cheek weld, and it'll look like this. And that is proper eye relief for me right there. The next fundamental we're going to talk about is breathing or breath control. This is something that's really, really important when we're shooting, and we want to be able to control our breathing so that way our sights will settle. When we take our shot, we want to shoot at a natural respiratory pause. And what that is at the top of our breath we have one, and at the bottom, such as this. Notice I stopped in two different spots. That's the top and bottom. So when we take our shot, we want to shoot at one of those natural respiratory pauses. We don't want to shoot as we're exhaling or inhaling, because that's going to move our sights around. So when we're behind our sights, it will look like this. All right, now that we understand how to breathe and what our natural respiratory pauses are, that's when we're going to start slowly pulling that trigger back. And when we pull that trigger back, we really, really want to be slow and meticulous about how we pull that trigger back. As we're pulling it back, we're going to feel that we naturally hit a back wall on our trigger. It'll be like a point of resistance, and that lets us know we're about to shoot that firearm, and we slowly want to pull through that, like so. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is follow through. And what follow through is after we take that shot, what we're doing. So when we take our shot, even though we pulled that trigger to the rear and the gun went off, what we want to do is we want to hold that trigger to the rear and we want to maintain cheek weld. So it's really important that we keep that trigger finger in place and we don't move our cheek off the gun when it shoots. If we let our finger go and move our face off the stock, that's going to cause us to be inaccurate. So what we want to do is proper follow through. Hold that trigger to the rear and keep proper cheek weld like so. In regards to trigger finger placement on our trigger, the standard is right in the middle of the pad of our finger. We want that in the middle of the trigger, like this. From there, what we want to see is a slow, steady pull to the rear. What we don't want to see is just using the fingertip on the trigger, like this, just barely touching it. And we don't want too much finger in the trigger. What these two things are going to cause us to do is when we pull that trigger to the rear, it's going to pull the rifle or push the rifle as we're pulling the trigger to the rear, causing us to shoot to the left or to the right. What we want to achieve is that center spot to where we can pull straight back and we don't alter our rifle at all. It's also important to note when we're shooting as far as grip is concerned, with that lead hand, if we're shooting off of a bench and we have the rifle in a rest, when you get behind your rifle, you want to ensure that whether you're using sandbags or a yoke like this, that it's actually setting on the stock. A very common thing that I see at the ranges is people will put their barrel on the rest, and that's going to cause us to be a little bit less accurate. So always use your rest on your stock when you're shooting. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of bonus content. It's not necessarily a fundamental that we're going to utilize while we are hunting. If you can, great, but the chances of you actually remembering to do this and having the time to do this while you're hunting isn't very realistic. However, this is going to help you dial your rifle in on the range to where you're going to get the most out of your rifle. So what we're going to talk about is what's called natural point of aim, natural point of impact. So what this is once we've gotten behind our rifle and we've done all the fundamentals like we just talked about, and we have our sights on our target. The reality of the situation is we're going to muscle our firearm a little bit into place to get it on to where our crosshairs are on the target. What I want you to do is prior to shooting, we're going to close our eyes. We're going to take a deep breath in, a deep breath out, and we're slowly going to open our eyes. And when we open our eyes, most likely your sights aren't going to be on your target anymore. And that's because you've relaxed your body and your rifle have gone into a natural position. So when we open our eyes and we notice that our crosshairs are off the target, what we want to do is we want to adjust our body and to where if our crosshairs are off to the left, we want to rotate our body right, and then we're going to do the process again. We're going to close our eyes, deep breath in, deep breath out, slowly open them until we have our crosshairs on our target. At that point, our body, our rifle, and our target are all in perfect alignment. And at that point, then we're going to continue through our shot process and take a well-aimed shot.